Tonight, we're not discussing walls made of steel or concrete, nothing you can see or touch. Instead, we're diving into a hidden economic barrier quietly rising between the US and Canada. A wall built from shifting behaviors and changing fortunes, not bricks and mortar. Former President Donald Trump has repeatedly criticized what he calls unfair trade, pushing for stricter border policies. But the real drama is unfolding in a much quieter way, one that's proving even more powerful than any law or tariff. Billions of dollars are slipping away from American stores, not because of new regulations, but because millions of Canadians who once crossed the border to shop, eat, and fill up their tanks are simply staying home. Their absence is deafening for American businesses, especially for small shop owners who relied on that steady flow of Canadian customers. For years, Canadian shoppers were the heartbeat of border towns, filling up parking lots, restaurants, and malls. Now, that economic pulse is fading, and the effects are being felt from Buffalo to Bellingham. Parking lots that once overflowed with Canadian cars now sit nearly deserted, a stark symbol of how much things have changed. This isn't just about fewer shoppers, it's a deep shift in a relationship that shaped entire communities for generations. The change has crept in slowly, driven by economic pressures, political friction, and a pandemic that upended travel and shopping, making cross-border trips less attractive and more complicated. The old routine, drive south, save money, enjoy a day out, just doesn't add up for many Canadians anymore, thanks to exchange rates, travel hurdles, and new shopping habits. What we're seeing is a quiet but dramatic economic shift along the world's longest undefended border, transforming border towns and the lives of those who depend on cross-border trade. The story of the missing Canadian shopper is more than a retail issue. It's a sign of changing ties between two neighbors and proof that old assumptions are being rewritten right before our eyes. To grasp what's been lost, let's revisit the golden age of Canadian cross-border shopping. For generations, Canadians near the border made shopping trips to the US a family tradition. Malls like Walden Galleria and Bellis Fair became household names in Toronto and Vancouver. At its peak, Canadians spent over $20 billion a year in the US, a massive boost for American businesses. It wasn't just big-ticket items. It was groceries, clothes, and even mail-order pickups. Border towns thrived on this steady influx of Canadian money. The draw? A strong Canadian dollar and lower US prices. When the loonie was near parity, the savings were undeniable. Canadians could fill up on gas, shop for a week, and still come out ahead. This cross-border flow built economic and cultural ties, making the border feel more like a gateway than a barrier. American businesses catered to Canadians, and Canadians became experts on US brands. Few could have predicted how quickly this river of commerce would dry up. So, what changed? Why did the once bustling cross-border shopping trips suddenly dry up, leaving Canadian dollars missing from American cash registers? It wasn't just one event, but a perfect storm of factors that came together over a few short years. First, the Canadian dollar took a hit. When the loonie dropped to 75 cents US, the price advantage that once lured Canadians south of the border simply vanished. Suddenly, bargains were harder to find. Overnight, a $100 shopping trip in the US now cost Canadians about $130, not even counting gas, meals, or travel time. The economic incentive that fueled weekend shopping sprees evaporated almost instantly. Then came political tensions. The Trump era brought new trade disputes, tariffs, and a chill at the border. Canadians began to feel less welcome, and stories of long waits and difficult crossings spread quickly. For many, the hassle and uncertainty started to outweigh any potential reward. Meanwhile, online shopping exploded in popularity. Amazon and Canadian e-commerce sites made it easier than ever to buy the same goods from the comfort of home. Canadians discovered local alternatives, and many realized the savings from cross-border shopping weren't as big as they once believed. Finally, COVID-19 slammed the border shut for nearly 2 years. Canadians broke the habit of cross-border trips, discovered new local businesses, and got used to shopping closer to home. The old routine faded away. When the border finally reopened, the world had changed. The math no longer worked, the old habits were gone, and the urge to shop in the US had faded for most people. The pandemic didn't just pause cross-border shopping, it accelerated all these trends, cementing a new reality. The tradition was dismantled by a mix of economics, politics, technology, and a global crisis, leaving a lasting impact on how and where Canadians spend their dollars. To truly understand the shift happening along the border, you have to listen to the people who are living through it every day. Their stories reveal the subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways life has changed. The Dubois family from Montreal, for example, once made regular trips to Plattsburgh, New York. For them, it was about more than just finding deals. It was a family tradition, a chance to get away, to explore, and to enjoy a different atmosphere just across the border. Now, with the Canadian dollar weaker than before and gas prices soaring, those cross-border trips have become rare. Instead, the Dubois family shops at a local outlet mall, trying to recreate some of the fun closer to home. But it's not quite the same. The magic is gone, says Marie Dubois, remembering the excitement of their old shopping adventures. David Chen from Vancouver used to drive south every other week to pick up packages at a U.S. parcel store, taking advantage of better prices and selection. But when the pandemic hit, he was forced to switch to Canadian delivery services. He soon realized that after factoring in shipping fees and taxes, the cost difference wasn't worth the extra effort or the risk. "I don't feel as welcome in the States anymore," he says, describing a sense of unease that lingers even as restrictions ease. "I'd rather spend my money here, where I feel comfortable and appreciated." On the U.S. side, the changes are just as real. Sarah Jenkins runs a small gift shop in Port Huron, Michigan, a business that once thrived on Canadian customers. 60% of my weekend business was Canadian, she recalls, her voice tinged with nostalgia for busier days. Now, she says, "I'm lucky to see a handful a week. The store feels emptier, and the energy just isn't the same." The downturn has forced her to make tough choices. "I've had to lay off staff," she admits, a decision that weighs heavily on her. Storefronts are emptying, and the sense of community that once defined these towns is slowly fading away. These stories show the real impact: families changing their traditions, shoppers shifting their loyalties, and business owners facing an uncertain future with every passing week. The Dubois family's decision to stay in Montreal ripples across the border, affecting livelihoods in Port Huron and beyond, in ways that are both immediate and long-lasting. It's a chain reaction, fraying the economic ties that once bound these communities together, and making the border feel more like a barrier than a bridge. The loss isn't just financial, it's deeply personal. It's about lost connections, missed opportunities, and a sense of belonging that's harder to find. The cross-border relationship was built on trust, routine, and shared experiences. Now, all of that feels uncertain, and both sides are left questioning what comes next. For many, the border feels wider than ever before, a gap that's not just physical, but emotional too. The economic wall is also an emotional one, dividing friends, families, and neighbors who once moved freely between two worlds. The future of these towns hangs in the balance, as they wait and hope for the day when the ties that bind them can be rebuilt. For American border towns, the loss is stark. Cities like Niagara Falls and Blaine depended on Canadian shoppers to fill their malls, gas stations, and hotels. Now, parking lots are empty, and sales tax revenue has plummeted. Local governments are struggling to fund schools and services. Businesses have closed or pivoted to attract local customers, but it's an uphill battle. Going out of business signs are everywhere. The psychological toll is real. Business owners feel abandoned by their northern neighbors. The cross-border relationship was more than transactional. It was personal. Now, there's a void where community once thrived. These towns face an identity crisis, forced to rethink their future. Without Canadian shoppers, they risk becoming ghost towns. The economic wall has left deep scars. The government response has been muted. In the U.S., federal focus stayed on big-picture trade deals like USMCA, ignoring the pain in border towns. No major federal aid came for struggling communities. States and towns tried shop local campaigns and small grants, but it's not enough to fill the gap. Tourism boards rebranded regions for American visitors, but the loss is too great for local fixes alone. In Canada, governments quietly welcomed the shift. More money spent at home means a stronger domestic economy. There's little incentive to encourage cross-border shopping again. The issue has fallen into a policy blind spot, too small for national attention, too big for local solutions. The U.S. hasn't prioritized the loss, and Canada sees it as a win. Border communities are left to fend for themselves. The once special relationship is now managed at arm's length. The consequences run deep. The U.S. has lost tens of billions in retail sales, with jobs and businesses disappearing in border states. The pain is concentrated locally, but the ripple effects weaken the national retail sector. Over-reliance on Canadian shoppers exposed a vulnerability. These towns put all their eggs in one basket. The crisis is a harsh lesson in the need for economic diversification. For Canada, the shift has been a boon. Billions now circulate at home, boosting retailers and e-commerce. But there's a risk. Less cross-border shopping could mean less competition and higher prices for Canadians. The fraying of economic ties could also erode broader cooperation between the two countries. When people interact less, misunderstandings grow. The invisible wall isn't just economic, it's social and political too. What's next for the US-Canada border? One scenario. This becomes the new normal. If the loonie stays weak and politics remain tense, cross-border shopping may never recover. US border towns will have to reinvent themselves or face decline. The economic wall could become permanent. Another possibility, a rebound if the Canadian dollar strengthens and relations thaw. US businesses could woo Canadians back with deals, but old habits are hard to break. Or a new kind of relationship could emerge, one focused on tourism, culture, and unique experiences, not just shopping. Towns might pivot from big-box retail to something more resilient and diverse. The future depends on economic forces, political will, and millions of personal choices. The era of the cross-border shopping spree is over, at least for now. Politicians' outrage won't fix it. Practical solutions are needed. Whether these neighbors rebuild bridges or drift further apart is an open question. The story of the missing Canadian shopper is a warning and a call to rethink what connects us.